The Big 12 is in trouble and they only have one hero they can rely on. But will he be healthy? Who knows? It was a great week of college football. We had Tennessee, Oklahoma, and of course, is Michigan back? We'll talk about all that and more. It's football, bro. You can find this in its video form Monday and Tuesday on the YouTube at Broshmo, or you can check out it on its audio form on any podcasting platform. Let's go ahead, get into a few of the top games this week in college football. Starting with Tennessee, Oklahoma. This was a watch-along game that we did. And man, I've been saying it for the last few weeks. Well, ever since the NC State game. This Tennessee defense is elite. It is legit. And it came to play. Fun fact, the Oklahoma defense is really good as well. But Tennessee didn't need Nico to be nuts. He had a couple of big plays here and maybe there. But this was a defensive game. This was, man. That defensive line for Tennessee just were absolute monsters. They were monsters. They totally bullied that Oklahoma offensive line. That Oklahoma offensive line, man, they feel just unfortunately manhandled. They really do. And I feel bad for Jackson Arnold because I don't think it was all his fault. But you had Hawkins come in and look relatively good. I mean, yeah, he looked like a freshman quarterback at points, but with his ability to create with his legs, that was kind of huge. It kind of got Oklahoma back into the game. Not enough to cover that 6.5. Won me my parlay, so I'm very happy about that. But Tennessee is a championship caliber team. They are. They could win it on the ground, whether that's with Samson, whether that's with Nico. They can win it through the air, through Nico's arm. Am I saying he's perfect through the air? No. This is his first year as a full-time starter, but he has looked relatively good. But this team has shown that they don't need the offense to be super powered. They don't need the offense to be spectacular every game. That the defense could buy time for that offense to get going if they need to. That this defense could grind the game out. Like, they are that good. They are truly that good. And the question might be, well, is Oklahoma good? And I think Oklahoma is good. Honestly, a 10-point loss to Tennessee isn't bad. We saw what Tennessee did to NC State. I know that they're not good. We saw what they did to Kent State. We know they're not good. But still, I mean, this was a team, Tennessee, that was blowing out bad teams. They didn't blow out Oklahoma. Oklahoma's got a really good defense. Am I saying that they're a championship or even a playoff caliber team? Absolutely not. But they're a good team. I think they're going to have a relatively fine year in the SEC. Maybe end up being an 8-win team. I think if things really go off the rails at offense or on offense. Because keep in mind, they had a lot of injuries at the wide receiver position. You had Nick Anderson go down in this game, along with, was it Thompson that went down? I can't recall, but they had some injuries. But even if the offense goes off the rails, I think this is probably still a 7-win team for the Sooners in their first year in the SEC, which, hey, that's still, I think, hella good. But that Tennessee defensive line, I mean, we could pull it up right now. Just looking at the pass rush win rate of some of these guys. You had Elijah Simmons, who 25% pass rush win rate. Freaking insane. Omari Thomas, who, hey, that's a favorite of mine right there. 15.4% pass rush win rate. James Pierce, I mean, he had 6 pressures, but it was still only a 13% win rate. So he didn't need to be spectacular because, well, fun fact, the rest of the defensive line was spectacular. This is a team that constantly got pressure. They had 33 pressures for the game. Just, again, absolutely obliterated that offensive line for Oklahoma. So maybe better days lay ahead for the Sooners. Tennessee, they're legit. Let's roll to this next game, being USC Michigan, I caught the fourth quarter of this game, went back, watched the first half, and whoo, man, don't sleep on Michigan. If they end up beating one of either Oregon or Ohio State, they're probably in the college football playoff. Like, how can a team that only passed for 32 yards be a playoff caliber team? Well, when their defense is freaking disgusting. I'm going to talk about the pass rushers for Michigan a little bit later, but the pass rush was insane. Like USC, their offensive line was outmanned, outgunned, and that was one of the things coming into this game. Can the offensive line deal with the trench warfare of the Big Ten? Can the defense deal with the physicality of Big Ten offenses? And I think the defense for USC played really well in the second half. Apart from the final drive where, dude, Mullins, he is your hero. He is your saint. He is your savior. All hail Khalil Mullins. The dude's a dog. Had a big day. I'll be talking about him later in the video when we talk about stock up, stock down. But I thought the USC defense actually played relatively well. They had a few injuries here and there, but the offensive line never got better. They were absolutely terrible. Michigan wins the game 27-24, and they end up being able to drive late, get the game-winning touchdown. USC, unfortunately, could not respond. Poor Miller Moss, man. This was actually a good game for Miller Moss. Some people might be like, what? What? The dude was pressured 27 times. You had guys like, well, first off, you had like Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant finally deciding to come to work. Josiah Stewart continues to have a huge year. He had an insane pass rush win rate alongside Derek Moore. So, like, this is a dude you need to put on your draft radar. I'm going to go back and I'm going to do a full eval on Derek Moore this week. But, like, he was impressive in this game. He's been impressive this year. Like, the pass rush is utterly insane from Michigan. It is. The defense is insane. You had Will Johnson. I don't know more about the injury. Unfortunately, when it comes to that, he ends up walking to the locker room in the second half. But he had the pick six, his second pick six of the year. On just, I get it, man. Miller Moss, you're under pressure. Like, Miller Moss very much had a up-down game, right? Let's just call it what it is. It was very much a up-down game. But I thought he played relatively well, man. He gave this team chances. Like, you saw the whole shot on the touchdown pass to take the lead. Like, Miller Moss is kind of legit. He's an NFL quarterback. He's an NFL quarterback. He's playing good football, especially given like just how the dire situation. And I mean, let's talk about the game flow, because Michigan utterly owned the first half. They go in halftime up 14-3, and this was all about USC trying to fight its way back. Let's give props to the man, the myth, the legend, freaking Woody Marks, having a good game here. He ends up going for 100 yards on 13 carries. He had 40 yards receiving, but probably the play of the game. Well, he had multiple. So on the, I think this was the drive to I don't think it was to take the lead. I think it was to bring it within 3. But he had the big run. He ends up going for like a 65-yarder. He comes off the field. I think there was like a false start or a lineman penalty, forces him back 5 yards. And he comes back in because he was a little banged up. He was working through something. I don't know what the injury was, but he was banged up. He comes back in, and Miller Moss gets strip sacked, essentially. Kenneth Grant picks it up, and he's scrambling down the field. The big boy's rolling. We know Kenneth Grant got that straight line speed. And Woody Marks was like, not today. not just ran him down, which, okay, that's not that unbelievable. Freaking Kenneth Grant, all of like 330, but stripped the ball away, forced the turnover, and gave USC another shot to get back in this game, which they did take advantage of. Woody Marks, you hero, you legend. He is him. I've been waiting for a big Woody Marks game. I really liked him at Mississippi State, and he's been relatively solid at USC thus far this season. But USC, I think better days lay ahead. I don't know about the offensive line though. Like, again, I mean, we could go look at it, and this offensive line was really working through it. You had Mason Murphy, who was playing both left tackle and right tackle. He ended up allowing 6 pressures. You had honestly a decent game from Pregnon, the left guard. My boy Jonah Monheim, he got his first taste of that Big 12 or Big 10 defensive fronts, and it was a rough go. Keep in mind, this is his first year playing center too. So, and he's 3 games into playing center for the first time. Ended up allowing 4 pressures here. But, I mean, you had a mixture of Raymond and Page at both left and right tackle. They allowed 7 pressures combined. Like, this was a bad showing for the offensive line of USC. They were able to get something going late, but like Michigan, they end up passing for 32 yards. You kind of knew the game plan when it was Alex Orji. You knew the game plan. We are going to just embrace, hey, we are a run the ball team. We're going to have to run for like 250, 300 yards to win games. We're going to grind out games. We're going to let our defense just take over, and we're going to try to control possession, allow our defense to put us in opportunistic positions, field positions, so that we can drive and put points on the board. So it's not going to be pretty week in, week out, unfortunately for Michigan. But I think it is a formula that can work. I think it is. Because they got the horses. The offensive line played a really good game. Keep in mind, Michigan's a team that replaced essentially 6 starters on the offensive line because they all went to the draft. And it's not to say that the guys on the offensive line for Michigan now are raw, because they're not. A lot of them are very veteran. It's just they're not experienced. So now they've gotten the taste of kind of these big games with Texas, with USC, and that's just going to keep rolling. So I think we're going to definitely see this Michigan offensive line grow before our eyes. Truly do. Everybody loves the NFL draft, and I know you want to be familiar with every potential prospect that your team may draft. So I got good news for you. My draft guide is available for purchase. It is good throughout the entire draft cycle, and it updates through the season regularly. You'll get my current evals and rankings on hundreds of different players with player backgrounds and analytics. It also contains combine and pro day numbers, as well as my notes from the Senior and Shrine Bowl. You can purchase it for a one-time payment of $30 on PayPal, Venmo, and now I have the Cash App. Follow the link in the description, and be sure to include your email because it is a Google spreadsheet. That is how I share it with you. So please, don't make me hunt down your email. Just don't do it. Anywho, it's a great purchase, and it's a great way to support the channel. All right, let's talk about this Big 12 conundrum. We might as well talk about both these games at once. So Utah ends up beating Oklahoma State 22-19. And then BYU after dark. It's a dangerous place. This is why I never bet BYU. I have lost many bets, either betting for or betting against BYU. And I've learned not to bet BYU. And I looked at this game and I was like, I like Kansas State +6 or -6.5, but I know don't bet BYU games. It's a fun fact. They have never covered for me, whether it was a under and over and under, whether it was taking the points, taking the money line, for them, against them. BYU just loses me money. Maybe it's because I'm not Mormon. I don't know. But I know not to bet BYU games. and I was right. I liked Kansas State -6.5, but I was like, something's funky. I'm not doing it. It's BYU. I know they're funky. Forget this. They smack Avery Johnson and Kansas State 38-9. Golly. But let's talk about the first part here. No Cam Rising just yet. Freaking no Cam Rising. He is the only one that could save the Big 12. Because the Big 12, they are not going to get more than one team into the college football playoff. Like, the Big 12 is, I mean, at this point, it doesn't feel like it's going to be Kansas. Kansas, they're 0-1 in the Big 12 right now. They're Kansas State, I should say. Kansas are on their own little struggle bus. They're 1-3. But Kansas State, that Arizona game, that didn't count. That was a game scheduled before Arizona became a part of the Big 12, so it doesn't count as a conference game when it comes to the schedule. So Kansas State, starting the year out, 0-1 in conference play. That sucks. So does Oklahoma State. I mean, Oklahoma State has looked terrible. I'm jumping around here, but it's like outside of whoever the hell wins the Big 12, what other team are they going to get into the playoff? Oklahoma State hasn't looked impressive. Kansas State, now coming off a really bad week, hasn't looked impressive. Arizona has not looked impressive. Am I going to buy into BYU or Central Florida as contenders? Utah, are we ever going to get Cam Rising? Even if this team wins the Big 12, is Cam Rising going to come back? How bad's the hand injury? Because I don't believe in Utah going to the college football playoff without Cam Rising. Like, Isaac Wilson's okay. I mean, really, this whole thing, like this Utah-Oklahoma State game, was just a battle between two offenses that have lost their way. Isaac Wilson, man, it's just like you're trying to mitigate what disaster with him. Because like this Oklahoma State defense was really good. They were all over the place. Of course, you had 2 interceptions there by Trey Rucker. Spoiler alert, another guy I'm going to talk about in that stock up, stock down portion of the stream. But like, honestly, like this, like Wilson made a couple of big throws here and there, but for the most part, this offense wasn't doing anything. Like Micah Bernard came through in a big way, but like Utah was really kind of just bailed out by the defense, putting them in very good positions and occasionally hitting the big play here and there. They almost let Oklahoma State back in this game because the offense is so inept at scoring that they couldn't really pull away. I mean, we saw Alan Bowman get benched after halftime just to reemerge, come back into the game and almost lead the comeback, so to speak. Ollie Gordon's not running this. This is one of the worst run blocking offensive lines in football. And some people will be like, they were so good last year. They returned quite a few starters. They weren't good at the end of the year in 2023. They weren't. And that's kind of rubbed off into this season. So I don't really trust either of those teams here. You got Kansas State, BYU, Avery Johnson basically got forced into, hey, you're not going to kill us on the ground. BYU came in, we're going to shut down the run. And they did. They were like, all right, Avery Johnson, beat us with your arm. Don't worry, we'll wait. And it never came. They had just had and I mean, dude, Avery Johnson's a young quarterback. I think he's a true sophomore. He's got time. But right now, that time is not now. It's not now. It was a great game plan for BYU. You had the magical punt return that you almost had Kingston pull a Deshaun Jackson and just drop the ball behind him after just a nutty, because initially it was muffed. He picks it up, goes one way, flips field, and then just takes it to the house. It was truly, truly magical. But Yeah, the BYU defense come up huge, even when Avery Johnson tried to go through the air. I think he threw a pick here or two, but is BYU legit? I don't know, because that SMU game, because I thought SMU was a bad team. Now I'm having to rethink that. Maybe TCU's just a bad team. I don't know, man. I'm just out here trying to figure it out. Sometimes college football, sometimes causation isn't correlation, or however the hell that saying goes. Sometimes you just can't take it. Take a team for what they were the previous week. Sometimes they just come back and play different. Question is anyone in the Big 12 good? Are they playoff good? And I don't currently have the answer to that. I don't. And that's going to be reflected in my college football top 25, which we'll get to in a second. But first, I gotta give. What am I doing? I always wanted to do Broadway, but I don't got the voice for it. What can I say? But we got to give a shout out to the sponsor of today's stream, today's video. And that sponsor is going to be Underdog Fantasy. When you use promo code Broshmo to sign up at Underdog Fantasy, they will match your first deposit up to $250. And you could get in on the action, especially today, because we don't just got one, but we got two Monday night football games. They have a couple of promos for you to take advantage of tonight. For instance, you get a free gimme prop pick. Burrow, is he going to go over or under 1 yard? Like I said, it's a gimme pick for your player props. They also got quite a few here. I mean, of course, you got like Josh Allen, James Cook. You got Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow, Jaden Daniels. He's almost guaranteed to score on the ground. I don't know. We'll see. But if you want to get in on the action at Underdog Fantasy, because it is the best place to play weekly best ball. I have a great time doing that. Or higher or lower on player props, then shoot, go to Underdog, sign up, use promo code Broshmo, and they'll match that first deposit up to $250. Let's go ahead. Let's talk about the college football top 25. That's right, because we had some movers this week. We had some movers because we had some winners and we had some losers in some of these big games. So let's go ahead, start this sucker right off the bat with my fallers, as you had Oklahoma going down to Tennessee. I didn't have Oklahoma very high in my rankings. I think the AP had them at 15. I think they were around like 22 for me. So, of course, this loss, now possibly changing quarterbacks, it causes me to have to drop them a bit more. So they're a faller. Toledo, rough loss, man. They had a delay in that game as well, but they end up go down to Western Kentucky 26-21 after the big win against a Power 4 team. Granted, that Power 4 team was Mississippi State, but still, it's a big win for a MAC team, and then you lose to Western Kentucky. That sucks. I still think that Toledo is the favorite to win the MAC, but having that one loss kind of takes them out of probably the run-in to be that group of 5 team that makes the college football playoff. And we'll talk about maybe a couple of the other options who can be that team. But those were my 2 fallers. Let's talk about teams that just missed it. As man, I want to get UNLV in this top 25 so badly. They are currently undefeated. They're coming off a bye. They get a big game this week, a big Mountain West game this week against Fresno State. So be on the look for that sucker. Illinois, they had a big win. I didn't have them ranked last week. They're on the outside looking in this week. They beat Nebraska in overtime 31-24. Basically, they were just a more physical team than Nebraska. It was a good win, but a big reason I didn't put them in my top 25 just yet is because this upcoming week they have Penn State. So I feel like if I just put them in my top 25 here and now, they end up losing to Penn State, they're going to end up falling right out. So I got them on the, okay, let's wait, and then let's see. Let's talk about the undefeated Indiana Hoosiers. Golly, they first of all, they covered the spread. They beat Charlotte 52-14. I had no doubt. I had them minus 20.5. They covered that. Felt great. But golly, Rourke is a monster. This offense feels good. And you still have the head coach there, former JMU head coach, saying, yeah, we didn't do things perfectly. We could be better here and there. But ultimately, I'm content with the victory. You just beat the pants off of this poor Charlotte team. You're just content. They do got a big matchup next week against Maryland. So we'll see. That's also a Maryland team not to sleep on. They've really only had one stumble this year, and that happened to be against Michigan State. I do think it's a very good Maryland team that's going to be finding their groove. So let's see how Indiana pans out there, and we'll see if they end up sneaking in to the top 25. Pittsburgh, watch out, the ACC. They got some players here. They got some players. Pittsburgh coming off the big win last second against West Virginia. There we go. And then they come in and they just pound Youngstown State. Kind of is what it is. To be expected. Poor Youngstown State didn't have a chance. They win 73-17. They will have a bye before they kick off ACC play. And then Iowa State, they smashed Arkansas State 52-7. Their biggest win thus far coming this year was against Iowa. I wasn't too high on Iowa, so that meant less to me than what it did to people making the top 25, the AP and all that. So that win didn't mean as much as it probably did to them. But they'll get Houston, who's just not a good football team right now, coming up. They should be 4-0 going into conference play. This is another team where it's like, hey, Big 12, do we have any legit contenders? If you're a legit contender, please stand up. Please stand up. And that's going to be reflected in my top 25. So let's just go ahead, get into it. As at 25, I still have SMU. I don't know what team SMU is. I just don't. Like, who is this team? Who the hell is this SMU team? Because they blow out TCU 68-42, and they do it on all three phases. They had a punt return for a touchdown. They had a pick six and a fumble six. And then offensively, they were just able to move the ball hella well. I'm just going to jump into the box score real quick, as it looks like Kevin Jennings is now the guy, as he went 14-19 for only 137 yards, but 2 tutties. The offense didn't really need to do that much. But boy, Brashard Smith. Yo, watch out for this cat. He's another guy that I'm going to see if I can watch this week. I don't know his eligibility, so that might decide if I watch him or not. So we're going to have to wait and see. But he had 3 touchdowns in this game. On the ground, he had another touchdown in the passing game. So 4 total tutties. Love to see it. But like, man, dude, just a dominant performance. And I'm like, okay. Like, this is where SMU is at. You start the year with a very underwhelming performance against Nevada. You try to get you get your win back by just crushing Houston. Was it Houston Christian? Then you have a ugly, tough, close loss against BYU, where it was very much a defensive game, and then you just pound TCU and ruin my big leg parlay. Okay, I see you, SMU. I just don't trust you. Rutgers, they go in. They beat Virginia Tech in Blacksburg. Mind you, Metallica did play, I think, the previous night there at the stadium. So that's kind of nuts. But not enough for Virginia Tech to get the win here. Though they did fight back. Listen, that's a good Virginia Tech team. They've taken, like, the opening week loss. Yeah, that kind of sucked. But I think that team's better than that loss. And honestly, Vandy's not that bad of a team this year. I mean, shoot, Vandy almost beat Missouri this weekend, and we'll talk a little bit about that when we get to Missouri. But yeah, Rutgers, this is a really good win. They're going to be taking on Washington next week, and I think that's very winnable. Washington's coming off a nice win there against Northwestern, but we'll see, man. I think Rutgers might be legit. Central Florida, they had the week off, but they get Colorado next week. Colorado fresh off winning a crazy game against Baylor where you had a Hail Mary and just all kinds of shenanigans. It was nuts. But as you can see, this is where you're going to start to see these Big 12 teams trickle in, because I have no idea really who is the front runner for the Big 12. I got an idea with... It just depends on their quarterback situation. But then who's that other team that can challenge here? As I got Oklahoma State here. I still think they're a good squad that just hasn't found their groove. And defensively, they're very good with guys like you got Colin Oliver. You have Nick Martin. You got Trey Rucker there in the secondary. You got good players on that defense, and the defense is able to keep them in games, but offensively, it's just got to freaking click one day. They will get a big game this weekend coming up against Kansas State. Both teams looking to rebound, and honestly, that game probably will eliminate the loser from participating in the Big 12 championship game. Arizona, they're coming off a bye. Think about what you did or what you didn't do the previous week against Kansas State, got blown out. Now you get a chance to really cause some chaos in the Big 12 as they take on Utah this week. Where is Cam Rising? Can I be your hero, baby? I don't know. How's the hand, Cam? How's the hand? So it's going to be fascinating. If there's no Cam Rising, if it is Isaac Wilson, then Arizona got a shot. Arizona's got a shot. They just got to learn to play defense and figure out they got to figure out their offense to be less T-Mac reliant. And I'm not saying, okay, don't throw to T-Mac. I'm just saying you got to be more than just T-Mac save us. So I got them here at 21. Let's go to team 20 here as it's USC after the loss. Listen, that's not a bad loss for USC. You travel to Ann Arbor. You get beat up physically, but your team looks really good in the second half. Miller Moss looks legit. Better days lay ahead for this USC team. They might not be competitors for the Big Ten championship this year, which they're probably not, but I still think they're a hell of a good team. I really do. I think they're ready for the task. You're just kind of hoping the offensive line could look a little bit better. Kansas State, again, they lost to BYU. BYU's one spot. Listen, I had BYU outside of the top 25. I can only bump them up so much, and I feel like Kansas State will get that swag back against Oklahoma State. I don't know. We'll see. Again, next week's kind of a big week for the Big 12. I think we're going to at least decide possibly who could be one of those teams in the Big 12 championship discussion. And then, of course, you got Baylor coming off, or not Baylor, BYU coming off of the big win. Now they're 4-0. And they take on Baylor, who's coming off a disappointing loss. You lost on the Hail Mary, then you lose in OT. It just sucks. It sucks if you're a Baylor fan. So BYU Baylor is going to be a very fascinating game right there. So be on the look. Again, someone's got to emerge from this Big 12 to challenge, which, okay, spoiler alert, Utah's the highest Big 12 team I have. But again, Cam, where are you? All right, I got LSU here at 17. They just don't feel that good. They lost also Harold Perkins for the rest of the year to, I think it was a knee injury. That's a big hit for a defense that was already kind of sucky. And that's just the case. I mean, I don't know, man. LSU just, they feel so lost. So lost. They feel mid. They feel like a very mediocre team. They end up being UCLA. UCLA came out, played a good game after getting pounded by the Hoosiers the previous week. But LSU, they get it done 34-17, I believe. Do they got a bye or are they taking on? No, they take on South Alabama next week. And then I think they get a bye before having to take on Ole Miss. So LSU, you got one more, seemingly a gimme game, but don't sleep on South Alabama. I mean, they're coming off a big Appalachian State win, so maybe don't sleep on them. Notre Dame, they're here at 16. They got the job done against Miami, Ohio, 28-3. They take on Louisville. I don't think this team's ready for Louisville. The passing game right now for Notre Dame is just, it kind of is what it is. This is a team that just struggles to push the ball downfield, and they kind of feel like Michigan, but you feel a little bit better about what's going on at quarterback. I feel like Notre Dame is just Michigan, but with a better quarterback, maybe. That's kind of where Notre Dame is, but they're going to be taking on a very good, very, very good Louisville team. All right, at 15, I got Clemson. Welcome back. Fresh off smacking NC State, which, hey, NC State, they're not that good of a team. It kind of is what it is. But they win 59-35. They covered the 18.5-point spread with ease. I had no doubts, especially after, the first quarter, or I think the first quarter, at least early into the second quarter, it was 35-0. But this Clemson team's better than what we saw against Georgia. They opened the year against Georgia. Georgia's a very good team. That was a very defensive ball game in the first half. And then in the second half, Clemson offense couldn't do anything. The defense got gassed. It kind of is what it is. But I thought that Georgia game at least told me, okay, Clemson, tough matchup. I'm not out completely on them. Let's see how they do in their cupcake portion of their schedule, which NC State wasn't supposed to be a cupcake game. Appalachian State, yeah, that was going to be a confidence builder, and it was. NC State ends up being worse than people anticipated, myself included, and suddenly that becomes this is kind of the get right portion of our schedule. They get Stanford next week. Don't sleep on Stanford coming off a big win against Syracuse. And then here I have Louisville at 14. A very, very impressive game against Georgia Tech. One where I thought Louisville did a wonderful job against a very good Georgia Tech offensive line. They were able to get the win 31-19. They do take on Notre Dame next week, and I believe that is in South Bend. So that's probably going to be our watch-along, one of our watch-along games, along with Bama and Georgia, of course. Michigan, they're back here at 13. Listen, I think they could be a college football playoff team. Oh, if they're only going to pass for 32 yards, then I don't see how that can happen. I do. That defense is really good. If that defense can create points, which, fun fact, it has already done this year multiple times, then, I mean, you just control the game, control the time of possession, control the line of scrimmage, run the ball. Like, dude, everybody got going. You had, I think, 3 players had 13 or more carries in this game. Granted, one of them was Alex Orji. But Donovan Edwards got going. Mullins has been, I think, their best back this year. Don't sleep on Michigan just yet. Am I saying they beat Ohio State? Am I saying they beat Oregon? No. But if they win one of those games, I wouldn't be surprised. Liberty's here at 12. They end up being East Carolina in a game that was delayed for many hours. Many hours. I ended up being able to watch the end of this game while sitting in bed. And it was pretty close. And keep in mind, ECU, they just lost Siobhan Revel, who was a legit first-round prospect at corner for the Pirates. They end up losing him for the remainder of the year, unfortunately. So that's a big hit. They came in and they played competitive against Liberty. I did think Liberty's I do think this week and then next week was probably going to be Liberty's toughest tests. They were able to get by ECU 35-24. Now they take on an Appalachian State team that's coming off a bad loss against South Alabama. So I still believe Liberty has the easiest schedule of any college football team in America. I think they probably go undefeated. They win Conference USA, and that gets them the Group of 5 bid. That's what I banked on prior to the season coming into the year, and I'm just going to ride with it until they take that L. Missouri's here at 11. They drop a few spots. Listen, I'm not saying Mizzou's not a good football team. They are certainly a really good football team. You're going to have some of these close wins against less than desirable opponents. I mean, Georgia just had it the previous week with Kentucky, but Missouri able to pull away in, fortunately, what was it? Overtime? They win 30-27. They get a bye next week. I still believe they have a relatively easy schedule compared to most SEC teams. They still have Bama on the schedule, but I do think they probably end up, worst case scenario, a 10-2 team, which should put them in contention for the college football playoff. All right, next, 10, I got the Hurricanes, baby. The Hurricanes. They covered the 16.5 against South Florida. I had no doubts. Took a big second half, but they did it. I'm happy they beat South Florida, 50-45. Cam Ward looked great in the game. He had an interception. I don't think it was entirely his fault, but he looked great. He's honestly, he looks like he could be quarterback 1 in this class, like quite legitimately. We'll see how that goes with ACC play kicking off. They will play on Friday night against Virginia Tech. I believe that game will be at Miami. Yeah, it'll be at Miami. It'll be at Hard Rock, so that's great. Cam Ward, he's on right now. He is pushing through. He's making a case for the Heisman, which, hey, next week on the stream, we're gonna be talking about Heisman contenders. I'm gonna list my top 5. So I'm excited for that sucker. But yeah, now Miami will kick off ACC play with honestly a solid a good Virginia Tech team. Like, they're 2-2, but that's a good Virginia Tech team with a lot of talent. Don't sleep on them. Oregon, they had the bye this week. They get UCLA next week, which honestly might end up being another bye. So yeah, basically it's just like, hey, let's try to fine tune this thing before Ohio State comes to town. That's where Oregon's at. Penn State, they kicked the crap out of Kent State like every other team has this year. 56-0. They covered, I think they like the final number for the spread going into the game was -50.5. I was a coward. I think I bet that when it was 42.5, and I still bet it down to like 33.5. Because again, I'm a coward. It is what it is. But hey, that's why I hit some of my bets. That's why I make money most weeks rather than losing money. I'm not saying I hit the big ones, but I take my $25 and I at least turn it into $100. And then I'm happy. All right, but Penn State will get Illinois. That honestly should be a fun matchup. We'll see, because like Illinois plays a physical brand of football along the offensive line, and Penn State, their edge rushers haven't really been, well, particularly Carter, haven't really been able to get into it, and I don't know if I have faith in their ability to consistently stop the run. So we'll see. Tennessee, they're here at 7. I want to move this team up further, but like everyone's undefeated here. Like I could have made a great case to drop Utah, but I truly believe Utah's they're such a different team with Cam Rising at quarterback that like when he comes back, it's going to make a big difference. I think they run away with the Big 12 with ease, and they end up being the only Big 12 team to make the college football playoff. And I think Utah could even make a little bit of a run. like with Cam Rising, when they get that stability at quarterback, like people don't realize how talented that team is both offensively and defensively. It's a really good team. It's just right now their weakest spot is quarterback. But you have a really good quarterback. It's just like, okay, get healthy. Come on. Utah does take on Arizona, so hopefully the man, the myth, the legend will be back for that game. But Tennessee, man, they're looking great. I believe they get a bye next week, which is awesome. But the schedule does get significantly harder in the SEC. I mean, it's going to start this week when I say the schedule gets harder in the SEC, I mean for a lot of these good teams. We're going to start off with like Bama and Georgia next weekend. Then you go to, let's take a look at week 6. And that's going to be, just show me SEC teams, please. Here we go, week 6. Oh, week 6, honestly, not that crazy. But I mean, Mizzou does take on A&M, but yeah. All right, let's take a look at week 7 then. As there's going to be LSU, Ole Miss, Texas, Oklahoma, Red River rivalry going on. Gotta love the alliteration there. And then week 8, when does this Texas Georgia game happen? Oh, it happens in week 8. Texas, Georgia, and you get Alabama, Tennessee that week. Golly. Whoo-wee. So yeah, the next month is could be an utter bloodbath in the SEC, but I think I honestly in reflection, I feel like I should have had Tennessee at 6. There, I said it. I should have moved the Utes down because I don't know if Cam Rising is ever going to be healthy. Top 5, Ole Miss. They pounded Georgia Southern, covered 35.5 because that's what they do. They covered. They get a Kentucky team, which we'll see. They should blow that Kentucky team out. What's the early spread on that game? If you don't mind me asking, what's the early spread on their college football game? As Ole Miss is 17.5. Of course, you would bet that down to 16.5, but yeah, that should be fine. Ole Miss's schedule doesn't really ramp up until I think that LSU game. Okay, don't sleep on South Carolina. That's fair. They're at South Carolina. Don't sleep on South Carolina. Okay, so yeah, it'll ramp up from here, but I think they get past Kentucky. Alabama had the bye. Georgia had the bye. We could talk about them all at once here. The big matchup is this week. Bama versus Georgia. It's going to be at... where's it at? It's going to be at Alabama. It's going to be at Tuscaloosa. I think Alabama, this is the first time they've been underdogs at home since 2007. And currently, Georgia 1.5 point favorite. I don't know where I lean in that game just yet. Texas, Archie got things done. Was it perfect? No, but he still looked relatively good. Taking on the Warhawks, they beat them 51-3. Honestly, they could start Archie next week against Mississippi State. Just give Quinn Ewers the time he needs to get healthy. I know it's not a serious injury. Maybe Quinn Ewers plays part of that game just to kind of give him a few series just to kind of get back into the swing of things. I don't know. We'll see. Ohio State, they start conference play next week against Michigan State. They beat Marshall 49-14. Listen, I know this team is a talented team, but something just feels off. Their blowouts haven't really been blowouts, at least early on. Like Akron and Marshall gave them problems in the first half. I mean, yes, they were able to pull away and blow out those teams, but it just hasn't been as clean as you'd like. But this team has so much talent, it's really hard to bet against them. But go ahead, let me know what you think. Who would you have ranked where? Why am I too low on this team? Everyone's got your opinions. State them in the comment section below. If you want more draft content, more NFL content, I got it on the channel. Maybe check out this video here. But as always, until next time, you be easy, my friends. Later.